Imagine a Georgia town, the kind of place where nothing ever actually happens, until late one night, when one choice cracks open something that no one could have possibly envisioned. This is the story of Hollow Pines, and I promise you, the truth of what happened will haunt you. It was late September in Hollow Pines, Georgia, the air heavy with that wet heat that clings even after dark. The town was a dot on the map, scarcely 1,500 souls, nestled well back in a pine forest, where the roads were more dirt than asphalt. Cell phone service was a joke, and the closest big box was an hour away in Macon. Main Street had a gas station, May's Diner, and a busy junk store everyone just called the junk store. Folks in Hollow Pines knew each other's business, for better or worse, and life moved slow and predictably until it didn't. Emily Carter was the center of the story, although she never thought to call herself that. She was 25 years old, holding sporadic shifts at May's Diner, pouring coffee for truckers and old guys. She had grand ambitions to move to Atlanta, perhaps attend art school, but her bank account never really had a chance. Emily was the type of individual who saw things. Little things, such as the way a person's smile didn't reach their eyes, or the way the air seemed different on the day a storm was brewing. She nervously chewed her thumbnail, and her hazel eyes were always seeming to seek something more. She was closing the diner alone that night, the hum of the neon sign fading as she turned it off. She crunched gravel and sneakers as she locked the door, the only other noise cicadas screaming in the pines. She was halfway to her dented Honda when something caused her to pause. Across the street, the junk shop window glowed softly under a bulb that flickered on a streetlight. The store was owned by Miss Clara, a widowed woman in her 70s who dealt in oddities, forgotten farm equipment, chipped china dolls, mildewed books. Emily generally rushed by it. The store creeped her out, like whatever was inside was staring back. But tonight, something in the window caught her eye. It was a small wooden box, about the size of a cigar box, sitting on an old red blanket. The wood was black almost, and pierced by strange looping designs that shifted when she squinted. It wasn't flashy, but it had this presence, as if it was holding its breath for her. Emily shivered, even though it was a hot night, and reminded herself that she was being crazy. Some piece of trash, she complained, but her feet were already on the street. The shop door stood ajar, which was unusual. Miss Clara always locked up at 6. Emily had her hand around the handle, metal cold on her hand. "Hello," she said, thrusting the door open. The bell above it clanged out, ringing clear in the silence. The air within was thick with dust and the sweet, sour smell of old things. Shelves stood towering, filled with glass eyes and amber-colored lace. Nobody answered. She went in, her heart racing the way it always did when she was nervous. The box was still there, still on a table and not in the window. Had it been moved? She shook her head. Her eyes were playing tricks on her. Up close, the carvings appeared even stranger, like letters in an alphabet she'd never learned. There was a small brass catch, no key. Her fingers hurt to open it, but her stomach screamed to let it alone. "Emily!" a voice growled, and she almost screamed. Miss Clara occupied the doorway to the back room, tangled white hair, wide, glassy eyes. "You shouldn't be here." I saw the box," Emily stuttered, retreating. "The door was open." Clara's face softened, but her hands trembled as she wrapped her shawl tighter. "Some things call to people," she murmured. "That box. It's here more years than me. More years than this town, maybe." She shuffled down, her slippers grating against the floor. "You can feel it, can't you?" Emily's lips dried out. She attempted to make light of it, but the air was heavy with an electric energy, as if a storm was approaching. "It's just a box," she said, but even to herself it seemed weak. Clara's eyes narrowed. "Take it then. Mine. But don't open it. Not here. Not anywhere." She pushed the box at Emily before she could argue. The wood was warm and weighed more than she'd anticipated. "Go home, girl, and don't come back tonight." Emily mumbled a thanks and bolted, the box tucked under her arm. Her car felt like a safe haven, the familiar smell of coffee and old leather calming her nerves. She set the box on the passenger seat and drove the short distance to her apartment above the hardware store. The whole way she kept glancing at it, like it might move on its own. In her own apartment, she set the box on the kitchen table, a squeaky thing she'd bought from a garage sale for $1 and then neglected. The apartment was small, cluttered with sketch pads and thrift store mugs, the kind of place lived in but not filled. She tried to push the box out of her mind, reheating leftover pizza, browsing on her phone. But her eyes kept catching on it. Those etchings, note-dental, they looked like something reminded her of, maybe a dream she couldn't remember. She was walking around at midnight, her thumbnails sore from chewing on it. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself, grabbing the box. "It's just stuff. Hopefully old jewelry or something." She flipped the latch open, her heart pounding. The lid groaned open, and inside was nothing. Just a little folded fabric, rough and gray, like burlap. She laughed, relief sweeping over her, but only briefly. The clothing was rippling. Not a lot, just a little ripple, as if whatever was under it was exhaling. She slapped the lid shut, her hands shaking. Nope, 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 nope. She jammed the box under her bed, hoping to make it go away, and burrowed under her blankets. Sleep eluded her. When it did come, it was restless, full of dreams of pine trees summoning her. The next morning, Emily hurt like she'd been hit by a truck. The box remained in its spot under her bed. She checked, hoping it had disappeared. She thought about taking it back to Clara, but the thought of going into that store again made her queasy. She headed to work instead, hoping the noise of the diner would drown out the discomfort gnawing at her. Maze was bustling on a Saturday, the grease and coffee scenting the air. Emily poured refills, smiled at familiar faces, tried for normalcy, but she still zoned out, her eyes drifting toward the window, half expecting to see that box on the sidewalk. Her best friend Jake slid into a booth at around noon. Jake was a mechanic, shoulders wide and one-sided grin, and habit of calling her M, like they were in high school. "You're like hell," he said, grabbing a fry from a plate she was holding. "Bad night?" She laughed falsely. "Just bad dreams. You ever get a bad feeling about something and can't shake it out of your head?" Jake's brow shot up. "Like what, a creepy client?" She hesitated, then leaned forward, whispering, "There's this box I bought at Clara's store. I don't know, it's been getting under my skin. I opened it last night, and there was this little piece of cloth inside, and it..." She caught herself, realizing how crazy she sounded. Jake didn't laugh, though. His smile faltered. "Clara's store freaks me out. You still have it?" "Yeah, under my bed." She winced. "Stupid, huh?" "Dispose of it," he instructed, deadpan. "Bury it, burn it, I don't care. My grandfather used to say some things carry bad juju. You don't play with that." She realized, but the rest of her shift she couldn't focus. The din of the diner was muted, like she was underwater. The sun fell by the time she walked in the door, painting the pines in blood-red tones. Something was different in her apartment the instant she walked in. The air was too still, the outlines too sharp. The box was still under her bed, but now it was in the middle of the room, like somebody had pulled it out. Her heart stopped. She was alone, No one had a key, not Jake. She reached for her phone to dial him, but the screen flashed and died. The lights in her apartment buzzed, their glare waning briefly. Okay, just relax, she whispered, and her voice quavered. She crouched beside the box. The top had not opened, but the carvings on it seemed sharper, like they glowed with a faint light. She didn't want to handle it, but she couldn't just leave it behind. She wrapped it in a dish towel and ran outside, her breath seized. The town was quiet, the streets empty. She drove out to the edge of Hollow Pines, where the woods swallowed up the road. There was an old clearing there, one the kids used as a place for bonfires. She'd incinerate the box, like Jake had told her, and get it over with. The clearing was dark, the pines towering silently. She stacked some sticks, her fingers clumsy, and set the box in the middle. Her lighter flashed, the flame catching on the dry wood. The fire spread, singeing the box, but it didn't burn. The wood itself didn't even darken. Instead, the carvings glowed, and a sound burst from inside. A deep, steady thud, like a heartbeat. Emily slumped back, her chest clenching. The air was cold, her breath misting. The thudding grew louder and faster, and then the box shattered apart. No explosion, no fire, just a blow of wind, and that gray cloth spread out, floating upwards like something alive. It pulsed there, rippling, and in the light of the flames, Emily saw what it was. It wasn't cloth at all. It was skin, stretched taut and transparent over something that didn't exist. She ran, sneakers screeching on pine needles, screams muffled by the woods. In town, she pounded on Jake's door, sobbing. He pulled her inside, face pale as she babbled about the box, the skin, the heartbeat. "We have to go back," he said, grabbing a flashlight and a crowbar. "We have to stop it." They walked to the clearing, the fire still burning, but the box and the hide gone. Jake cursed, scanning the area with the beam of the flashlight. "Em, you sure this is where—" "I'm not crazy," she snapped, her voice breaking. "It was here." That's when they heard it. A rustle, then a whisper, like voices just out of reach. The pines seemed to lean closer, their shadows twisting. Jake grabbed her arm, pulling her back to the truck. "We're not alone," he whispered. The next week was purgatory. Emily slept hardly at all, jumping at every noise in her apartment complex. Jake started hearing things in his garage, equipment creaking, whispering at night. Other people who lived in Hollow Pines noticed it too. Old Mr. Tate, who worked at the gas station, described how his mirrors kept fogging up, even in the summer. Kids said they saw faces in trees. Miss Clara's store was closed down, and nobody knew where she was. Emily and Jake dug into the town's history, desperately trying to find some answers. They discovered a journal in 1892 at the library, written by a minister named Elias Holt. He described bringing to Hollow Pines a relic that came with a visitor, a box that spoke to the weak. The people set it on fire, but half the town lost their minds before they did, claiming they saw a shroud that walked. The journal simply ended, the last page smeared with something black. "It's the same box," Emily recited, her voice hollow. "It's back." Jake slammed the book shut. "Then we locate it and destroy it. For real this time." They searched the woods, the shop, even Clara's empty house. Nothing. But the gossip grew, the shadows thicker. Emily awoke one evening to find her sketchbook on the floor, pages filled with drawings she had no idea she had made, spirals, symbols, that same skin-like shape. She burned the book, crying, but the next morning it turned up, uncharred. Jake was not getting better. He showed up at her place one night, his eyes bloodshot. "I saw it, Em. My garage. It had my face. He wouldn't talk anymore, just sat, his fist wrapped around his crowbar. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. The town was strained, people locking their doors, churches packed. Emily and Jake had pulled into the diner, ready to be gone from Hollow Pines for good, when the lights strobed. There was a scream that sliced through Main Street. They rushed outside, and there was Miss Clara in the middle of Main Street, shawl gone, face ashen and slack. She held the box, its carvings pulsating red. "You opened it," Clara said, her voice a sigh of wind across dry leaves. "Now it knows you." Emily froze, but Jake sprang forward, wielding the crowbar. Clara stood still. Air rippled about her, and that flesh things emerged from the box, wrapping her like a second skin. She laughed, a laugh not of this earth, and faded into darkness. The town fell apart after that. People ran, or tried to. Cars were breaking down on the only road out. Phones were running out. The pines were tightening, closing in on them. Emily and Jake stayed behind, stubborn or scared enough to do so. They found the box again, this time in the diner, on the counter waiting. Emily did not linger this time. She poured gasoline on it, lit a match and watched it burn. The skin stuff screamed, a sound that echoed in her head, but it hurt too, collapsing into ash. Hollow Pines was never the same. Most folks departed, the town shrinking to the size of a ghost town. Emily and Jake moved to Macon, but they don't talk much anymore. Some evenings, Emily wakes, swearing she hears that heartbeat. She looks under her bed just in case. This is the part no one wants to say out loud. The box wasn't alone when it arrived at Hollow Pines. Whatever was in it, it didn't disappear. It migrated. A friend of mine in Macon called me last week about a strange box she saw in a thrift shop, inscribed with symbols. I laughed and dismissed it, but I haven't slept properly since. If you're still here, go ahead and give that like button a tap. It allows me to keep bringing you stories like this. Subscribe and ring the bell so you can be there for the next one. And in the comments below, ask me, have you ever found something that was wrong? Something you couldn't quite identify? Let's talk. Stay safe out there, and maybe twice think before you open that dusty old trunk in the attic.